All right, welcome to another episode of I Guess I'll Do It with Pat House. Today, a very special guest. If you are a comic, you own a copy of I Killed, and hopefully you own a copy of Kicking Through the Ashes, two incredible books about stand-up comedy from amazing comedian Ritch Shydner. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Pat. Thank you.
Dude, Sarah. All right, so I start off every podcast with a memory of meeting my guest, and you and I met one time. So I loved I Killed. I read that a million times earlier in my career. And then when you released Kicking Through the Ashes, I fucking loved that book because you are so vivid, you're so descriptive of what it's like to be a comedian, and I love the way you talk about stand-up comedy. So I'm on the Borgata's website, and I see you're there, and I hit you up on Facebook, and then you invited me to the show, and then we hung out in your room and talked comedy for like 2 hours. and I just never forgot that because I loved both your books, and then you invited me into your world for a little bit, and, you know, to me, that was very, very special. So thank you.
Cool, Pat.
I really, I still think about that, and I appreciate that a lot. So I'm here in Philadelphia, and you have a lot of ties to this area as well, right?
Yeah, I grew up in South Jersey, Pennsville.
Yep.
So we're in the Philadelphia orbit. You know, that was the big city to us.
Yeah, that's not too far away at all.
No, half an hour.
Yeah, so let's go back to the very, very, very beginning. Your first set was in Washington, D.C.? The first time you...
That's right. A place called... It was an Iguana Coffee House. It was a coffee house in the basement of a church. It had been there since, I guess, the 60s or something, and I went in there in 1977 in January. Like, just got back from Christmas break. I was in law school. My friend was like, "You got to do comedy." I don't think we knew to call it stand-up. I mean, I'd seen stand-ups. I'd seen Pryor live by then. I'd seen Robert Klein live, but not Pryor live. Carlin live by then. I'd seen Klein live and other, but I don't think we knew to even call it stand-up. And so he found this place and took me down there. And it was, the disaster that most first sets can be, it really was.
I kind of had the opposite. My first two sets went well, and then I got my ass handed to me for the next, 10.
Yeah, see, you now, what year did you start? I'm always curious.
2004. I just hit 16 years.
Okay, so here's the thing, Pat. When you started, people were well-versed, well aware. Stand-up comedy had become a normal, acceptable profession, let alone artistic expression.
Yes.
And when I went up there, literally my introduction from this guy, it was open mic. So there were poets, mostly poets and singer-songwriter types, right? He goes, "This guy's going to try to do something funny." That was my intro. That was the first showbiz intro. And it was like a warning more than a explanation of what I'm going to do. People did not, people didn't see a lot of stand-up comics. You'd see them on the Tonight Show and 2-hour talk shows. Obviously, they were in nightclubs, but they weren't as ubiquitous. I mean, I used to go, all my first jobs were opening up for bands. My first jobs were going in front of rock crowds. And I'd walk out there, I didn't know what I was going to do. They were, even if the person introduced me remembered to say comedian in front, usually they go, "Please welcome Ritch Shydner." They didn't know. I walk out and he doesn't have an instrument. What's he going to do?
That's so crazy to be on the ground floor like that, because I love the history of stand-up comedy, and I love talking to people that were doing it, way before my time. You were in at a level where, like you said, people didn't even know to call it stand-up yet. That's fucking bananas to me.
Yeah, they were calling
because
stand-up, yeah.
I started in 2004 in a comedy club, so I had the whole entire red carpet rolled out for me.
Right. It was truly, when back then, if I was at a party when I started doing stand-up, and we knew to call it, I just didn't know to call it at first. But eventually, of course, it was being called stand-up then. When I was at a party and somebody say, "What do you do?" I go, "Stand-up comedy." It was almost like the place was just, everybody go, "What? Stand-up? I've never met you." Right? And then it got to the point, the late, great Kip Adada told me a story once. He was going in to do a one-nighter in some small town up in Michigan, and he pulls into a gas station to try to find out where the venue was. And he asked the guy pumping his gas, and he says, the guy goes, "What do you do?" He says, Kip goes, "I'm a stand-up comic." He goes, yeah, my brother does that sometimes, I know. And then he starts listing all the guys he knew who did it. It got to the point where I wouldn't even tell people I was a stand-up. I'd rather say insurance salesman, so it would stop the conversation. right? Because
What?
everybody knew about stand up, and it was sort of like, everybody knows that. Yeah, everybody does that.
I was talking to Richard Lewis one time, and he asked me about comedy now, and I said there's just a million comedians and people that call themselves comedians who just do one open mic. And then I asked him if I thought there were more people doing comedy now or way back in his day, and he said back in his day. And I think there's a ton of people out now, but I guess with the boom, like you said, everybody claimed to just be a comic.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a different. Every generation has a different struggle to get to the microphone. That's just my thought. And in our time was to find a place that would let you do it. I had to go talk people into letting me do it in Washington, D.C., a pizza place. I talked them to let me do it. I mean,
Oh, God, yeah.
You'd go around to the singer-songwriter nights in the pubs, right? There were just one Jackson Brown or Bonnie Raitt or, a type after another. And I'd go in and say, let me do comedy. They go, what? I say, I want to do just 5 minutes of comedy. You had to talk your way into this stage to find a place to do it. And in this generation, it's just being able to get to do it in front of regular people and not other comics. I mean, because most of the open mics are just littered. The audience is just other comics. So
and you're not paying attention. Everybody's being selfish, and I'm guilty of that. I'm 100% guilty of that.
It's a self-absorbed profession. So they're just thinking of what they're going to do or what they, that's it.
I know. And when you perform comedy in front of other comics, everybody's head is in their notebook. Nobody's even looking at you.
I once went up when I was coming back to stand-up comedy back around 2010, and I went into a place and literally the comics had their laptops open on their tables, looking at their laptops. They were on their phones or on their laptops. Nobody was looking at me. Nobody.
Maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, I was the middle act. I was featuring at Helium Comedy Club in Philly, and a woman in the third or fourth row had her iPad out in a dark, sold out showroom. And I even said, I was like, is that a fucking iPad? And then it got real quiet, and then she put it away, and I moved on. And I just said something like, I'm not mad. I just want to let you know that was really weird. Like,
when the comedy club started putting television monitors up next to the stage, right?
Yep.
That was back in somewhere in the late 80s or whatever. They started, the newer clubs started opening up and trying to put. Now they had those up so they could put little previews of the comics coming next, right? Little video clips of the comics coming next or whatever they wanted to for the entertain the audience before the show. I said, eventually that'll be it. They'll just be while you're on stage, they'll be showing a sporting event or something else because the audiences have no attention span. I said, eventually there'll just be a drive-through window for people who really don't have the time for a full comedy show. They get a couple of jokes to go. That's it,
and I think I could see how it's beneficial in like bigger comedy clubs, but some of the clubs that have the TV screens, broadcast the show you are seeing live in front of you on that TV, and I'm amazed by people that watch the TV when the comic is right there.
Exactly. I used to point that out. I'd go on stage and go, look at this. You're watching the TV. I'm right here, but you're so accustomed to just being at home watching TV. That's what it is. People are just... I said, it's so weird for people to be out in public. They're so accustomed to being home. And now with the pandemic, wait till we come back to live shows after this. It's going to be even more of that.
Oh, it's already bizarre. I've done a handful of live shows and shit's weird, but there are still hecklers out there. There are drunk crowds. There are shitty crowds that don't pay attention, that don't put out much energy. So even though we've had this pandemic and some things have gotten back to normal, some things have not changed.
Never will. No. Well, the more you study comedy history, stand-up comedy history, which I really love, the more you realize there's really no difference other than the technology. That's all.
Dude, and okay, thank you for saying that right there. You just said you love the history of stand-up comedy. So do I. Do I. I've devoured everything you've read. I have hundreds of books written by comedians and books about comedy. It's my favorite thing in the world. One thing in your book I remembered is that you recorded your very first set, correct?
Yes, and I cannot find the tape. This guy asked me about it. I had a tape. My Howard Vine, who was a law school classmate, taped it, on a cassette, I had the tape. I had 2 divorces, and I got rid of a lot of stuff on my part, and the exes got rid of a lot of stuff too. And I had it. I know I had it and listened to it previous to 2003. When that divorce, I lost a lot of stuff. I lost most of my tapes, the sets I did on Carson, Letterman. I only have a couple of tapes left of those. So I don't know where it went in the equation. I also got very angry and threw a lot of stuff out, and I might have overkilled on that. You know, you look at at one point I looked at my career, I go, what a crap career. Look at this picture. Jesus, get out. You know, I threw stuff out. You know,
I remember that story from your book because you said in your first set you got one individual laugh, and you kept replaying that. Because,
yeah.
but I totally get that because I record my sets, and when I work on something new and it crushes, I go back and listen to, maybe this is very vain or narcissistic, but I go back to listen to the reaction that joke got, and it fucking makes me happy though.
Look, look, Pat, the transition every one of us had to make, if you're a stand-up comic, is to go on from being funny in the moment around your friends to being funny on demand in front of strangers. That's the big transition. That's what you have to become. And you know the significance of it. Even when I didn't know the significance of it, I knew the significance of it. I knew this is a person who did not know me before I walked in that night, and I did something that got a reaction out of him. You know, a starter of a laugh, a beginning of a laugh, not a full laugh, but the beginning of one. Okay. Yeah. And I remember talking to Jerry Seinfeld, and he had exactly the same reaction in his first set, and he put exactly the same amount of significance to it. He went, that was enough to get him back to do a second one. That was enough for me to get me to come back and do it again.
100%. I think a lot of us had that experience because it's this euphoric rush you can't even describe. The first time I was on stage, I think I only did, I don't know, 3.5 minutes, but a handful of consecutive jokes got laughs, and I was like, holy shit. And that was October 13th, 2004, and I have not stopped since. Like, some people come and go, take 6 months off or a year. Dude, from day one, 16 years ago, up until the pandemic when everybody stopped, like, I did not stop. I think the longest in 15 years I went without doing a set was like a week, maybe a week and a half in 15 years.
Yeah. When I first started, I didn't take any days off. None. I lost a girlfriend. Didn't matter. She's like, I couldn't stay away from one night. And then I read an article. I can't remember. It was a Rolling Stone article with Richard Pryor. And Richard Pryor was as hot as could be. This was like 1976, 77, somewhere in there. Hot as could be, like number one comic in the country. And he told the guy, the interviewer, he said, listen, we'll do the interview in a couple of weeks. I got to take a vacation. I'm going to Hawaii for a couple of weeks. So we'll do it when I get back. And then a day later, Richard Pryor calls the guy, I can do the interview now. I'm back in LA. And the guy goes, I thought you were taking vacation. Richard says, I got off the plane, walked on the beach for half an hour, said, what am I doing here, man? I might lose my funny. I got to get back on stage, and flew right back to LA. And I got that.
That's so awesome. You know, so my parents like to go on cruises, and I've joined them on a couple. So here I am. I'm on vacation. I'm on a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean. Turns out I know the comic on board. So here I am on vacation, having lunch or dinner with a comic every day, talking shop on vacation. It is inevitable.
Yeah.
I remember growing up watching I think you mentioned her name in your book. I was on a cruise once, and Thea Vidal was the comic, and we hung out every single day. And that was a cruise where I was with friends for a wedding, but here I am hanging out with the one comic on board. I have 15 other friends on the ship, but leave it to me to fucking find the comic, and now I have a best friend for the week.
That's so true. It's so true.
Yeah, you said in your book that you were on stage night after night, week after week, and I did the same thing. Like, once I found out about more open mics and got into hosting a little bit, I would say my second through 8 or 9 years in comedy, I was out 6 nights a week. And on that 7th night, I remember being like, man, I wish I had a show or somewhere to hang out around comics.
I was in law school doing 4 or 5 nights a week in DC when there was really no place to do it, but I'd find places and I'd always go out and do it. And when I got to New York, there's no way. I remember I'd come back in the city from doing a one-nighter in Jersey when they had these Jersey one-nighters at Jerry Stanley Open, $55 they paid. And I'd come back into the city, and say there's three of us, we come back in. The other two comics would go to the bar and go, we've worked for the night. We got paid. They'd have a drink. I run right up to the MC. When can I go on at the Improv, right? When can I go on? You can go on. Okay, in 2 acts, you're on. Great. Then I'd be calling over to Comic Strip and catch. How's it going over there? Got a crowd still? Yeah, I'm coming over. If I could get 3-4 sets a night, that was heaven. I mean, in the weekends back then, you could do 4 or 5, sometimes actually 6 shows a night if you worked it right.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Now they were 20-minute shows, but it doesn't matter. It's all a function of stage time. You know that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wednesday, when I was in college, Wednesday was the night where I could get up 4 times. I would go to this bar at 4th and South called Abilene, go on before the first band, run down the street 2 blocks, which is very close, do the open mic at the Laugh House at 2nd and South. I would get in my car, drive to the Comedy Cabaret in the Northeast, and then come back to Abilene where I did my first set, and then go on either before or after the last band. It took about 4 or 5 hours, but you could get 4 sets on a Wednesday if you really hustled.
I remember once when I was doing this sort of thing, and a friend of mine who's a musician, his name was Robin Thompson from Richmond. God rest his soul, he's gone now, but he was really good. He was in Springsteen's early band, Steel Mill, and he was a really, really good musician. And I was doing that one night. He goes, I don't get it, man. I mean, how much attention you need? I said, Robin, this is me practicing. I can't sit at home strumming my guitar like you, practicing my guitar and get better. If I'm not in front of a crowd, I can't get better. I can't get better without the audience.
That's 100% true. I was actually just saying to somebody just the other day, we're talking, and it was a person who's not a comedian, so they're not even a real person in my mind, about if you have something new or if you're working on something, I could say this bit out loud 55 times in my hotel room or my bedroom. Doesn't mean shit when I say it in front of 300 people. You're going to fuck up a word. It's just not, you can practice out loud and get the basic structure, but it is not the real deal until it's in front of people.
That's right. That's right.
And people, I guess, don't get that. They think you just work on this at home and then you go up on stage and make it happen. Like, no, there's energy involved. There's expectations. And then it's the real deal when you're, thrown to the wolves.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole thing of just, it's the writing aspect of, like you said, going from the page to the stage is another whole transition that has to happen. But it's also just like your performance skills of being up there. The more you're up there, it's you have to just do it. You have to perform in front of an audience to get better. There's just no other way of doing it.
Absolutely. When did you, or I should say, where did you perform in Philly in the early days? Because you started in D.C., so were you in D.C.? I mean, I read your book, but I don't recall every detail. Were you mostly in D.C. for a while, or did you come up here for shows to Philly or Jersey?
Before I even got on stage the first time as a solo act, I did a team with a buddy of mine from college at Grandma Minnie's. There was a place called Grandma Minnie's that was open. I somehow discovered.
Oh, I've heard that name from many Philly comics. Yeah, so
that was like about 75 or something, and then I didn't go on stage again as a solo act until 77. But there was a place called the Laugh Factory. Steve Young was the owner.
Oh yeah,
comic.
I know Steve.
Yeah. So that was in a Middle Eastern restaurant. It was at a 3rd floor or something, or 2nd floor. It was upstairs and downstairs. There was belly dancing going on in a Middle Eastern restaurant. I think Jim Tayoun, a Philly politician, I think that was his name. For some reason, I don't know why I remember that. He owned the restaurant, and they had the club upstairs. And it was a great club, great room. You'd come out of this door from backstage, an actual door open in a wall, and you'd come out to the stage. And it was a really great room. And that's the first place that I performed professionally in Philadelphia.
That's cool. I saw in your book I don't remember if it was tied to a specific story or you just happened to mention the name in passing, but you mentioned the London Grill at 23rd and Fairmount, and that's the bar I drank at when I was underage and where I actually had my 21st birthday.
I can't remember. I think the name of the hotel they put you up was a Society Hill or something. It was a hotel. Okay,
yeah. That's a different part of the city, but I think it's cool that in your book you mentioned so many local references that like that's why I found your book so relatable, because you even mentioned people that I also know.
Yeah.
Dude, there were so many things in your book that I love, like again with the history of stand-up comedy and you doing it at your time and everything. Like I love the fact that you knew Rodney and
Rodney. He was wild, man. He
Dude,
was.
I've heard a million stories because I'm pretty tight with Dom Herrera, and Rodney did a lot to help Dom. So I can sit for hours and just listen to Dom tell stories about Rodney and all sorts of, and his wide open robe. I feel like
everybody's seen Rodney's junk.
Everybody has seen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what you asked me. You know Rodney. If you haven't seen his junk, you never hung out with Rodney. That's it. Right. but his club was like, it was professional, an old school professional dinner club, right? That Rodney opened it, I think, back in the late 60s, maybe, 68, like that.
I bombed there many times.
Well, when we first opened it, when I first got to New York, let me just put it that way. When I first got to New York in 79, it wasn't open to comics. There wasn't an open mic night for comics. There wasn't a young comics night. But what he would do is he'd bring in they proms or special events where they bring young kids in and all. So he'd bring the young comics over and we'd work that, right, for $75 or whatever. And then he let you hang out. So you could hang out when Jackie Mason, go see Jackie Mason for free, or Jackie Vernon, or any of those Jackies, Jackie Gale, any of those Jackies. You could sit there and watch them perform, and
Jackie Robinson, Jackie O.
Yeah, exactly. All the Jackies.
I did the New York scene in 2011 for a year, but I can't even say I really did it because I got zero good stage time, and I knew I could get better stage time and some money down in Philly. So I was going back and forth every 3 days. Like, I lived on the Jersey Turnpike for a year. Wow. But Dangerfields, they were nice to me, and I got to do 15 minutes there almost every Monday. I probably did 12 or 15 sets there, and I'm fairly certain, if I remember correctly, I liked one of those sets. I would just bomb there every fucking Monday. And it's not that I didn't mind, you can always take a lesson from a bad set, but it was like a papered room on Mondays and half the crowd didn't speak English, and I was like, this is just fucking brutal week after week, but they were good to me there.
Wow. Well, at least you played there.
Absolutely. You said you have a story in your book about Sammy Davis Jr. pacing nervously before a show.
Yeah.
And it's because he said, "I care, baby. I care." And right. I highlighted that in your book because that is so true and so reflective of the way, if you care about your product or your act or whatever, you're going to be nervous. It's weird when people don't have a little bit of that uneasiness in them before a show.
I think once you get that you don't care, you just shouldn't go up there anymore. I mean, to me, that's for me anyway. Yeah, I'm nervous every time because until I get that first laugh, I don't know. I don't know.
Absolutely. And when you get that first laugh, you're like, okay, you can rest your shoulders easier. You laid some groundwork. But when it takes you 3, 4, 5, 7 minutes to get the room going, it's like, dude, your arm hair standing up, your back's wet.
Yeah, sometimes you have to go up and redirect the audience from what the act before was doing, so you have to sort of reset their minds. If the act was really great or really bad, you have to sort of kind of sometimes dig your way out of what they were doing.
Absolutely. So, if somebody does some weird shit ahead of you, then it's your responsibility to kind of get them back.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's it. That's it. But when you're the headliner, you have the time. It's like, I'll get you. Don't worry. I'm going to get you.
And do you feel, all right, so a million times in my career, whether it's hosting or featuring, do you feel like the crowd knows the headliner is going to get the job done? And what I mean by that, it's like, I've seen headliners destroy, and some of them really aren't that funny, but do you think when the host says and now you're ready for your headliner, do you think that puts the crowd in a mindset of okay, this is the real reason why we're here, and changes their mentality? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it changes their expectations. They go up, okay, this guy's got to be better than the 1, 2 before them. And some headliners, of course, I mean, I think it's always, I remember one time after the show, this couple came up to me afterwards and she said, I knew as soon as you walked up, I could tell he's in control. You have a certain amount, if you've done it enough, you could, when I hit the stage, I'm not in a hurry. I don't have to, you just know you're going to get them. You have the goods, you have it. And they know it. When they sense that you know it, when they sense that you're in control. And that to me is a lot of times what heckling is somebody going, are you really here? Are you in control here, man? Let me just test you a little bit. See what you got,
Were hecklers a big part of the early days when, at the time where you didn't even know if it was called stand-up? Did everybody feel like they could chime in because the art form didn't really have a known format yet?
Well, again, like I said, I didn't know it was called stand-up when I first started doing it, but the word of obviously was being used. I don't think that it mattered to them. When they see you up there, it's just instinctual. There's one guy telling jokes. All right, let's see how funny you really are. I want to see if you're really in the moment sometimes. And then, of course, a lot of it's challenging you. I mean, and when you were going in front of a rock crowd, they're like, I remember I opened up for like the Plasmatics once. The Plasmatics was this punk band. There's a young comic who actually was in the audience when I did this. And he never forgot it. I never forgot it. I got up there and they started yelling, just cursing. And I go, listen, the band's not going to come out for 15 minutes. If you kill me now, you'll just have to watch my body rot on stage, but they're still not coming out. Right? And that got a laugh from them. And then as soon as the laugh died down, someone went, die. And they're like, no, go ahead and die. We'd like to see that. You know what I mean? So, you get them for a second, then they come back. And that's opening up for something where they didn't expect you to be a comedian on stage, or there was a whole different thing. But the comedy clubs, there was people coming to see that. They expected it, and there was much more reverence, I think, for the comedians.
Yeah, I see what opening for bands is so tricky. I hosted a battle of the bands at my college, Temple University, and I just fucking ate it because everybody was there to see their friend's band. And numerous, there was, 3 or 4 bands on the bill, so it's all their friends coming there to see them. And I had to do time 4 or 5 times that night. So I'm sitting like, fuck, I got to go bomb for 7 more minutes. And I just bombed every single individual set that night. You opened for the Ramones too. That's awesome. I've always been a huge Ramones fan. What was that experience like?
So I was hanging out at this bar called the Child Harold in Washington, D.C. So I've been doing stand-up comedy around town for, over a year. This was like in the fall of 78, I think. And my friend was a bartender. I guess he told the owner. The owner was this Bill Hurd, legendary D.C. bar owner. And he came up to me and said, you're doing comedy. I got this band coming from New York next week, and I'll give you, it's like $50 or something. Open for them. I was like, I didn't even know you could get paid. I was like, that's how rude I was. $50, yeah, I'll do it. And I come back to Ramones. The place was punk. It was punked out. That was my remembrance of it. There was an audience there that I felt I was whenever I was 25 at the time, and I felt old. They were just younger, punked out. And I was like into my, painter bib overall, long hair, Jackson Brown era or whatever. And all of a sudden it's like, who are these guys with the shaved heads and stuff? And so I got on stage and I had to walk through. It was a small room. It was just one of those little 6-inch plywood stages up front.
Yep.
And they booed me when I was walking up, and they booed. And it didn't take long before somebody threw a beer at me. Then they started throwing beers at me, but I would not leave the stage because I was like, the guy had bet me whether I'd stay up there or not, And so I was like, I'm double or nothing on this $50. And so they're just throwing beer at me, and I'm just standing there, and I don't have any improv skills. I didn't have any special punk material for them. Nothing. Man.
Yeah.
I'm just, anyway, my mom from New Jersey, just getting nailed with beer. And so he just waves me off this small room. He's yelling back, come on. He's waving the money at me. And I come off stage. I go in the back in the kitchen, and the Ramones are standing. I am soaked with beer from head to toe. And one of the Ramones looks at me and goes, cool act, man. Like, that's But here's the kicker. Here's the kicker to me. So when we did the book I Killed, the story's in there, a version of the story. I had not talked to Howard Vine, who my friend was at that show. And he filled in a lot of stuff later for me that I didn't remember. And with this book is coming out, and we're doing publicity around the country. And the music critic for the Washington Post says, don't review this book because this is bullshit. This guy never opened for Ramones. I was there when Ramones were there. I was there when they first came to DC, and there was no opening act. And so I'm telling this guy at the Post, I go, listen, man, I don't know what to tell your friend, but I was the opening act. He said, I'm sorry, man, we can't review the book for the Washington Post, which disappointed me because I was from D.C., right?
Yeah.
Up to a year later, this guy, Dave Nutticum, a Post writer, calls me back and says, listen, my friend, the music critic, he apologizes. His wife, they were talking about this, and his wife says, well, no, there was some sort of small disturbance at the front of the stage before the show.
Small disturbance.
That was me. I was the disturbance at the front of the stage, which I wanted to make like a title of a book or something because it's such a great description.
Oh my God, that's so funny because we've heard stand-up and our acts called a million things. Are you doing your monologue? Are you doing your little sketch? But a small disturbance
at the front of the stage. That's it.
Hey, are you going to bother us before the real show? Or
I told him, I said, listen, I wasn't up there long. I didn't say I was up there long. Believe me.
But I was there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So when I got I Killed right away, and I read it cover to cover a million times because I was, what year did that come out? 07, 08? Ballpark?
2005, 2006, somewhere in there, yeah.
Okay, around there. So I was a year or two or three into comedy. I'm still brand new, and I just couldn't get enough of people's like horror stories. So I read it over and over and over again. That must have been so much fun to compile, right? Did you have a blast?
No. It was, you know, when Mark Schiff and I, when we looked at the amount of man hours we put into this book as to what we were paid, we would have done better working at McDonald's. I'm telling you, man. First of all, and secondly, we didn't know we're fighting with the publisher, you know, Crown Publisher, which is Random House. They're telling us what stories they want in. We're like, no, this guy's got a better story. Well, he's not a big name or whatever it was. We were fighting over the stories, and we were screwing up the stories. You know, we were transcribing people. There were maybe 3 comics who actually wrote their stories out. Alan Havey's the only one I can remember off the top of my head. He wrote his story out completely. Just did a beautiful job. Everybody else, they're like, yeah, I'll tell you over the phone, or we were live in person, tape record them. So we were taping them over the phone or that, and we were getting people to transcribe it. So sometimes the transcription people put the wrong name on the story, right?
Which is a huge fucking mistake.
Yeah. So Mark Maron, I remember seeing Mark Maron. He goes, hey, dude, man, my story's in there under somebody else's name. You know, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, man. So we had those problems. Then they'd go, listen, we do the transcript of the story, and we go and send it to Random House. They go, this is like a terrible first draft. You got to rewrite the story. So we go back to the comic and go, you have to rewrite it to get it in the book. They want it rewritten. They go, you just rewrite it. Let me see it. And so that became a problem because sometimes we'd go back to them and say, here it is. And they either weren't paying attention or whatever. They'd go, yeah, okay. And then they'd go, I didn't like that. We put it, I go, you signed off on it. I had to rewrite it and then you signed off. And so it was we made a lot of people angry. You know, that's it.
Wow. Well, that's how naive I was to that because here I am thinking you're just shooting the shit with comics. And
no, getting stories from comics was the most fun. Just listening on the phone. Oh yeah, you're right about that. That part was the best.
Oh my God, because that's my favorite thing in the entire world. Yesterday, I wouldn't call it a panic attack, but I had I don't know what to call it. I worked myself up. I got really stressed out and worked up for about an hour because I'm recording 3 podcasts today. And then I'm like, what the fuck am I getting worked up for? I'm talking my favorite subject, comedy, with comedians.
Yeah.
And yet I in my mind, it was like work or added stress when in reality, this is my favorite thing in the entire world. Talking comedy with comics is my favorite thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I love the book so much. Is because I just imagine a lot of that. And I love just the diversity of it. Comics there's, so many comics that are huge in that book. That seems like the coolest fucking thing in the world to me.
Yeah, and it also got me really pushing even more into the history of it. So I became much more involved in studying the history of it and writing about the history of it. And I'm doing this show now, a history of stand-up comedy. I'm doing a live show and then writing a book based off it.
Oh, that's awesome. Is that your current project right now?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
yeah. I was supposed to do it a lot, and then the pandemic shut down about 20 shows I was going to do this at festivals and all. It's just a fun fun show to do. I take it from the beginning, the first stand-up comic up to today, and what my real focus is on about what stand-up comic in any particular time, what it said about America, why comics were popular, because they reflected America's zeitgeist perfectly at the time. And so that's my sort of focus on the book. Otherwise, it'd be too much to write about every stand-up comic since the beginning.
Oh God, yeah. Do you still write stand-up at all? Does everyday life give you ideas
every day there's something that happens? I got joke files like
Dude,
I've always had.
Absolutely. I write notes on little pieces of paper throughout the day, or put like a voice memo in my phone, or like a note in my phone.
Yep.
And then like when I go to organize them every 2 or 3 days, I always have more ideas than I thought, which is kind of cool. But it's always there. Something every single day, numerous times a day, something happens, and I'm like, well, I've got to write that down.
Yeah. It's a compulsion that I've had since 1977. Yeah.
Did you always write everything by hand?
Oh my God. Yeah. Like every comic, I'd come home at night with matchbook covers and cocktail napkins written with jokes on them, scraps from a ripped out magazine in somebody's bathroom that I wrote in the margins. I'd always have papers that I'd be unloading my pocket full of papers, always writing. I'd go into a bathroom at a party and wrote down something I just said or somebody else just said. Can I get in the bathroom? Not until I finish writing this joke. You can't.
The worst is when you write something down and still have no idea what you meant.
Oh, listen, my handwriting. But really, I used to think it was a curse because I'd write something I couldn't read it the next day or 2 days later. But now I realize most of the stuff I write is crap anyway. So I say to myself, I'd rather feel worse about my handwriting than about my comedic thinking. I'd rather feel worse about the handwriting.
I love when I'm working with a comic and I see their notes or notebook, because I love knowing people's like method to their madness. Like every comic has like their own thing. Some people have like set lists and bullet points. Some people write in a Sharpie in all caps. Like I love seeing people's method to their madness.
Absolutely. There's a comic named Jim Edwards in LA. He's carrying around the same notebook since he began comedy. It's just got more and more stuff into it, more pages stuffed into it or whatever. But he's and then there's guys. I mean, if you ever see Bill Maher, I was always amazed. He had the most meticulous micro handwriting. I mean, in a normal like college line paper, he could put 3 lines in the margin, 3 lines between lines. He could write.
Oh wow!
And yeah.
And Seinfeld's known for only using yellow legal pads, I believe.
Well, that's what I started with, local legal pads, because that's what I was in law school, and that's all I was doing was writing with legal pads. So I had those. Then the 3x5 cards, then the 3x5 cards went into the computer, and just like you now, it's like I send myself emails all the time.
Yeah, I would say 90% of my stuff is still handwritten. I just use the phone for like quick notes if I'm doing something and can't get to a pen and paper real quick. I always, even if I'm out and about for the day, I have a pocket-sized notebook, and I keep that in my back pocket with a pen. And as weird as it sounds, it makes me feel like a comic, like I'm ready for something to happen to jot it down at any given time.
All right. Okay.
And yeah, that's just some weird tick I still have. But I like you said earlier, I've seen comics at the open mics like recently with like computers out, and I don't know if have an older school mentality, but I'm not down with that. for the live performance, do all your comedy work at home, but you don't need to like edit your short film at the open mic.
I'm always taken out of it when I see a comic on stage referring to their notes or going. It's like, go up there. Since Lenny Bruce is there, it's been a conversation. It's been a conversation. So you're having a conversation. Now you're referring to notes. It's like when I see somebody speaking, I just want you to speak extemporaneously without notes. That's all.
When was the last live show you did?
Here in North Carolina, a place called Guidon Brewery. As a matter of fact, I did my stand-up history show there probably 5 weeks ago or something. 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks
cool.
ago. Yeah, and it was fantastic because they were all civilians. There weren't any comics there, no showbiz types. It was Henderson Hendersonville, North Carolina, and that was it, man. I say Hendersonville, it's Henderson. Sorry.
You're in Asheville now?
Yeah, I'm in Asheville. That's right, Asheville. North
Okay,
Carolina.
my podcast producer Andrew Moose is in Hickory.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I know where it is.
How close are they together?
Yeah, I think Hickory's about an hour or so away. It's on the way to Charlotte. You could go through Hickory on the way to Charlotte. Yeah.
Oh, no kidding. Well, if I ever make it down that way, fuck, we got to grab coffee or something.
Absolutely. You'd like it here. It's nice.
It does. I've done the Charlotte Comedy Zone a couple times. That's a great club.
It is. I used to do it a lot in the late 80s, early 90s. Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that room a lot. And I've done Good Nights in Raleigh a bunch of times.
That was a great room too. I don't know if that's
still is.
Open. Is it still open?
Yeah.
Great.
Yep. I was there, obviously pre-COVID, but I've been there probably 8 or 10 times over the years. I had a really fun show there. It was a weird week. There was like a different headliner every night. People were just doing some one-nighters, but I headlined on Wednesday for 20 people, and it was amazing. It was one of those nights where you're like, oh, this is going to suck. This is going to be work. I had those 20 people, and I did well over 45 minutes. Yeah. Like, it was one of those magical nights where you think it's going to suck, but it ends up being way better than you even anticipated.
Right.
So I think about that when I think of Good Nights, but that's a great club.
Yeah, we're just like the same as vaudeville actors. However we did in that town, that's how we viewed the town. If you bombed in Raleigh, you would have been like, yeah, Raleigh's not a good place, man. It's not a good city.
That's so true. And see, okay, let me ask you this, because this is my craziness. I was talking to with another comic about this. Let's say you have, you're in the same club in the same city all week. You have 7 shows in Raleigh, right? Let's say the first 6 shows are great, but the Saturday late show sucks. Do you go home dreading and angry about that last show being shitty, or do you focus on the previous 6 shows that were better?
I learned this early on. The only way to get a bad set out is a new good set. So until I get on stage again and make them laugh, wherever it is, doesn't matter if I bomb in Raleigh and fly back to LA, I got to get on stage in LA as fast as possible.
Yes.
To get that bad taste out of my mouth. I mean, I learned that early on.
I agree 1,000,000%, but for whatever reason, if the Saturday late show sucks and I drive or fly home the next day, I'm only focusing on that show. I'm like, man, that fucking late show sucked.
Yes,
the other 5 shows where you killed, like, doesn't even matter if the last show of the week blows.
Or it doesn't matter whenever. It's the last show you did is the only one that matters.
Yeah.
Look, we're unless you're taping, unless it's filmed or whatever, a live show is the most perishable fruit on the planet. I mean, it is rotted and dust as soon as the applause dies down. It only exists in the memory of the people who saw it. It's just gone. It's vapor.
Yeah. I like the way you put that. You did a ton of late night. What's your favorite to do? Or is that too vague of a question?
No. I probably, I mean, I liked all of them. I liked obviously doing Tonight Show with Carson was like getting approval from your dad for me, and my dad did give me approval for doing that show because he watched it. So, but Letterman was, you felt like you were scoring with your contemporaries. Letterman was, he's an older big brother instead of dad. It felt. I mean, I really liked what you could do on Letterman. I felt looser coming out on Letterman. I always did.
Oh, cool. I love watching all those old late night sets. I've watched all your Johnny Carson that you have on your YouTube channel, and Gary Shandling's first Carson set is like probably one of the funniest 6-minute sets I've ever heard in my entire life. I watch it like once every 2 or 3 months.
Yeah,
like
it's phenomenal.
That 6-minute set was fucking ridiculous.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, he had the best bad dating, bad relationship jokes. He really did. He really did. He had the best breakup, bad date jokes of any of the comics back then. It was almost a specialty. They were so good. He was a great writer, great comic. Oh,
dude, so great. So in the boom, like when comics like at its height, which comics really made you laugh? Which comics did you really enjoy?
Well,
because you knew a million people.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess when I name the names, you're gonna go. Of course, they're so obvious. I mean, Gilbert Gottfried was so out there and fun to watch. As cantankerous as he was, he was just brilliant, fun to watch. I mean, I of course love the guys you would expect. I mean, the later Bill Hicks
Oh
was
my
a
God,
was a
obsessed.
marvel. Was a marvel. I saw the transition from being like a straight network comic to he was fearless. He was willing to, people go like, I want to be a Bill Hicks. You got to be willing to walk audiences. I mean, walk them, until he got down to the people who just cared what he was doing, and then built from there. He was amazing. Kennison had, remember Kennison, you see the rise from being this late night comic that only comics watched, to be like four drunken tourists who forgot, too drunk to leave up front, and then the back of the room packed with comics to watch him. Then all of a sudden, he became a thing. He became a thing on Sunset Boulevard. All the hipsters found him, all the rock and rollers, he became a thing. And watching that growth, watching him doing exactly what he was doing. There's so many great comics to watch. I mean, and I learned from all of them. I mean, the Craftsman that Seinfeld was, Larry Miller, what a performance artist he really was. I mean, watch Larry Miller put himself into a routine. Rich Jenny was. I remember speaking at Rich Jenny's memorial. I said, most comics, when they find a new premise, they just take a bite out of it and leave it, But by the time Rich Jenny finished with a premise, there was nothing left but bones. And Larry Miller was like that before Jenny. Larry Miller would do a 17-minute bit on skiing. And if you had any jokes going skiing, you just went, well, I just drop them because I got 2-3 jokes. Larry Miller covered those and 17 more jokes. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
so there were so many great comics to watch back then, people who were just because we were all young and just trying to find our way. So there was a lot of experimentation, and watching my ex-wife, Carol Leifer, watching her just, pushing the envelope for women. And she's inspired by Elaine Boozler, who I think is one of the great groundbreaking comics of,
Hysterical.
right. Yes. It's always funny. There's no doubt about it. Funny, but the way she changed, before her, most women, and I'll say Lily Tomlin too, because Lily Tomlin is the same era. Obviously, Lily Tomlin is one of the greatest comics ever. But Boozler changed. They did a sociologist in Toronto did an experiment and wrote a paper based on listening to recordings of comedians, men and women separately, and she found that women were doing self-deprecating material about 65% of the time, and men were only doing self-deprecating material about 11% of the time. That women put themselves down on stage great amount of time compared to men. And Boozler completely flipped those numbers. If you look at her when she did the Freddie Prinze Young Comedian special on HBO, and watch her set, and I timed her set, and I looked at the jokes in her set, and she did very little self-deprecating material, And
I'll watch that. I'll absolutely watch that.
go watch it on YouTube. It's phenomenal. You watch it just to watch Tim Thomerson, who was a star back then, and people don't remember now. I remember seeing him. I drove out to L.A. in '78, summer of '78, to check out L.A. because I'd heard about the Comedy Store, right? And so I drove out there, and I went to the Comedy Store. And of all the comics, when I came back to D.C., only one I really remembered, obviously besides seeing Richard Pryor, I mean, you would remember, was Tim Thomerson. I was just mesmerized by Tim Thomerson. He was charismatic. He had this long piece, which he does in this HBO special, Young Comedian special, about Stagecoach, a movie, and he was unbelievable. And so he's on that. Freddie Prinze, Jay Leno, young Jay Leno's on this special. The special, I think, is 1976 or something.
Okay.
Like yeah,
I'm making a note right now.
You got to watch it. It's on HBO. So
absolutely.
Watch Boozler on that, and you'll see she has changed. All the women of my generation and Carol Leifer and all, they loved Boozler. They loved Boozler. I mean, she was inspirational. She was people they all looked up to as the one the way to do it, I think.
Dude, I see. This is the stuff I love hearing about, and I consider myself pretty well versed in a lot of comedy, obviously, but I never heard of Tim Thomerson. So you just made me excited to check out something new. So I love this shit. Which comics make you laugh now?
Well, obviously Dave Chappelle and Bill Burr, Maria Bamford. I love Maria. I can never get enough of Maria Bamford.
Here's a quick thing about Maria. I'm going to cut you off real quick.
Yeah.
Her husband is from like the Philadelphia area, but like a little more north, like Allentownish, like an hour away. And whenever, this is obviously before COVID, she would be in Philly all the time doing open mics. Like this is like as recently as like a year, 2 years ago. Like as amazing and as funny and talented as a pro as she is, she's in Philly hitting the open mics just like the rest of us. And I think that's so awesome.
That's probably why she's still so great.
Absolutely. So, okay, I'm sorry to cut you off there, but that's cool.
No. I listen. I like I said, she's a real artist. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I love her. She's funny as hell, and she's always surprising to me.
Chappelle and Burr, though, yes. I mean, different level. Chappelle could read the back of a shampoo bottle to me, and I would be enthralled.
He is magical. Michelle Wolf. I love Michelle Wolf. I think her and I have a very similar. I think this is my way of looking at it. Very similar approach to comedy, a comedic mindset. I think there's some pieces that she did in her last special. I saw one. Oh yeah, I had a piece kind of like that years ago. So you know, she's someone who really obviously makes me laugh. I just love her. I love her thought process. I say that because I just said it's like mine. I love the way, her and I think alike, and I love the way she thinks. I tell you that.
I love the way she reminds me of me.
Yeah, exactly. So no, but there's so many great comics now. There's way more great comics now than ever, and they're better at it. And the art form is always being elevated. It's always growing. There's just a lot of funny comics. I remember I just recently watched this roast of Ritch Voss, and the guys were just, I think, at the Comedy Cellar, and they were just, you could tell all these guys, Jim Norton, all these comics, they just written some bunch of stuff. They weren't doing it for money. There wasn't a show being taped for broadcast or anything like that. They just wrote a bunch of jokes about their friend, and I go, what a high level they worked at, and they were just doing it for the fun of it. That inspired me. It was like, wow, they were just doing it for their friend, to roast their friend. But there were so many great comics working at obviously putting some real effort into it. I don't know, it's inspiring.
The roast Voss, the Voss roast is great. I've watched that many times, and okay. I know a lot of the comics in there. Like Joe Matarese is there, and I know all these guys.
Yeah.
Do you remember the legendary Wid?
He's in my book. I don't know if you remember the story or not.
I thumbed through it the other day.
Okay. I'll tell you. That's okay. It's okay. So Wid, first time Carol and I leave her, we were a couple. We were married. First time we go into Philly. Wid he's a young comic. He's the MC, right? So he goes out and does his thing. And then Carol's the next act. Well, he leaves the stage littered with his props. Right? And so Carol says something to me, it's tough. I can't move around. I can't move around without stepping on something or tripping on something. So I go to Wid for the next show. I go, hey, Wid, listen, you got to do me a favor here before you leave the stage, before you bring up Carol, you got to clean up your stuff, man. Because you know how he did. He'd bring these props and just fling them around. Here's this one, drop that one, move on to the next one. And he's, oh yeah, he's a really nice guy. Because yeah, no problem. I'll do it, no problem. So the next show, he does the same thing. So Carol comes off, and when I walk out, I just start picking up his props and doing my jokes off his props. And when I finish with it, I'd wing the prop at the back of the stage, just against the wall, just throwing them. Now I'm breaking things. I'm like, but I'm just doing it. And the crowd's going crazy. And by the time I'm finished, I cleared the whole front of the stage so I could work, right? And then I go into my act. And then the next show, Wid finishes his act, puts all his stuff back into the box. He learned his lesson.
I saw him 2 weeks ago, actually.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's a great guy.
Oh, he's the great guy. And so my very first set, October 13th, 2004, it was Wid who brought me to the stage.
Oh,
So
that's great.
Yeah, he's great. He's so funny. And me and my friends, Wid is like, he's so off the charts brilliant. Like, he could hold up one toy but have 15 jokes about it. And I remember one time I was walking down South Street in Philly. I had just started doing stand-up. I'm like less than a year in, and I see Wid walking down the street, tie-dye shirt, listening to the music in his own head, and he has like a piece of PVC pipe that's like 10 feet long and a model airplane just walking down the street. And I remember thinking, that's a half an hour of material for him right there.
Yeah.
Dude, he's great. And you're great too, man. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. I could talk comedy with you all day, dude.
Anytime, Pat. We could call on air, off air. We could just do it anytime.
That sounds good, man. Is there anything you would like to plug here at the end? Your next project, or?
No, there's nothing really. I mean, there's nothing to plug right now. I mean, I'm just writing this book on the history of stand-up comedy, and we'll come back and talk about it sometime. Hopefully, when the book is finished.
Oh my God, absolutely! I would love for you to be my first repeat guest. That would be.
Thanks, Pat.
Fantastic, dude. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it, man.